Hey everybody, today I'm going to explain default arguments. Default arguments are a default value for certain parameters. The default is used when that argument is omitted when you invoke a function. In the last topic, we discussed positional arguments. Today we will be examining default arguments. Then in future topics, we'll examine keyword and arbitrary arguments. Let's begin. Let's define a function to calculate net price. There will be three parameters: an original list price, a discount, if there is one, and sales tax. We will return a net price, and here's the formula: list price times 1 minus our discount percentage times 1 plus our sales tax. Maybe I'm buying a PlayStation 5 for $500. I will pass in $500 for the list price. Well, I can't actually execute this function without also passing in an argument for discount and tax. Perhaps the discount is 0 and the sales tax is 5%, 0.05. Well, this would work, and I should probably put this within a print statement so you can see it. There we are. My total is $525. The list price of $500, no discount, and 5% sales tax. Now suppose that maybe 90% of the time when we're executing this function, most of the time discount is 0 and our sales tax is almost always the same. What we could do to make this function a little more flexible is to set these two parameters to have a default value. In place of sending in 3 arguments, we can pass in 1, then set our discount and our tax to have a default value. So I will set discount to be 0 and tax to be 0.05, meaning 5%. So this function would work. Our total is $525, and that's assuming that our discount is 0 and our tax is 5%. The nice thing about using default arguments is that, let's say that somebody has a discount. Well, this function would also accept up to 2 additional arguments. So let's print our net price, 500, and our customer has a coupon for 10% off. I'll add a second argument of 0.1. If we're passing in an argument for our discount, we'll use whatever is passed in rather than the default. Our total now is $472.50. Or maybe this time, they are not paying sales tax. I will set the sales tax to be 0. Now the customer's total is $450. So that's kind of the nice thing about default arguments. It makes your functions more flexible, and it can reduce the number of arguments, especially if the arguments that you're passing in tend to be consistent. Most of the time people don't have a discount, and almost everybody is paying 5% sales tax. Why pass in arguments if we don't have to? Let's cover an exercise. We'll create a count up timer. We will import the time module. We will define this function, define count. There will be 2 arguments, start and end. Count up timer. Don't have to. Let's cover an exercise. We'll create a count up timer. We will import the time module. We will define this function, define count. There will be 2 arguments, start and end. For x in range start, comma, end, Within the range function, the second argument is exclusive, so I'm going to add 1 to the end of our time. Then I will print x. To make this thread that's running the program sleep, you can access the time module's sleep method, pass in 1 for 1 second. Then outside of the for loop, let's print the word done. To invoke this function, I need to pass in 2 arguments, a start time and an end time. I'll set the start time to be 0, the end time to be 10 seconds. So we start at 0, then we will increment by 1 every second. I'll speed up the video, I think you get the idea, but we'll stop at 10. Let's assume that most of the time a user would like to begin at 0. Well, we don't necessarily need to pass that in as an argument. Let's set our start parameter to have a default value of 0. We only need to pass in 1 argument, but we do have a problem. Non-default arguments should follow default arguments. So if you use any default arguments, you'll want to be sure that they're after any positional arguments. So let's reverse these. And that should work. So now when I run this program, it's assuming we'd like to start at 0, but we'll need to pass in an ending amount of seconds. When do we want to stop? That works the same. But now we do have the option of starting at a different number. This time, let's end at 30, but we will begin at 15. We're beginning at 15, then we will count to 30. I'll speed up the video. There we are. All right, everybody. So in conclusion, default arguments, they are default values for certain parameters. The default value is used when an argument is omitted. They can make your functions more flexible and reduce the number of arguments you have to pass in, especially if those arguments are consistent most of the time. So those are default arguments, and in the next topic, we will discuss keyword arguments. And well, yeah, those are default arguments in Python. Hey friends, it's me again. Today I'm going to explain keyword arguments. A keyword argument is an argument preceded by an identifier. It has a few benefits. It helps with readability, and the order of the arguments doesn't matter if they're keywords. Keyword arguments are one of 4 basic styles of arguments. We discuss positional, default, then next we'll discuss arbitrary. But today we'll be focusing on keyword. Suppose I have a function to display a message like a greeting. I will name this function the hello function. We will need a greeting, a title, Mr., Mrs., Dr., a first name, then a last name. All I'm going to do within this function is print an f string. I will print my greeting, the user's title, first name, last name. Then to invoke the hello function, I will need to pass in 4 arguments: a greeting, a title, a first name, and a last name. So for my greeting, let's say hello. The title will be Mr. The first name will be SpongeBob. Last name, SquarePants. So you know, this does work. We're currently using positional arguments. The position of these arguments does matter. So what if I were to switch these around? We have hello SpongeBob SquarePants followed by Mr. Hello SpongeBob SquarePants, Mr. An optional feature when sending arguments to a function is that we could turn these into keyword arguments. Prefix any arguments with the name of the parameter followed by equals. Title equals Mr. First equals SpongeBob. Last equals SquarePants. Then with these keyword arguments, the order really doesn't matter. Maybe we move the first name to the end. And this still would print out as the same thing. We have title, first name, last name. If you're mixing and matching positional arguments and keyword arguments, you want to be sure that the positional arguments are first. So if I was to move the string, our greeting, to the end, well, this technically wouldn't work. We have a syntax error. Positional arguments follow keyword arguments. So make sure any positional arguments are first before using any keyword arguments. Two helpful benefits of using keyword arguments is that it helps with readability, and the order of the arguments doesn't matter. We know what this argument is, as well as these two. Title, last name, first name. Let's say we have a first name and a last name. John, James. These two names kind of sound like first names. Is our first name John, or is it James? We could use keyword arguments to clarify which is which. You thought John was the first name, but it's actually the last name, and the first name is James. Then our title is still the same. Hello, Mr. James John. Let's cover another example. I'm going to print the numbers 1 through 10 using a for loop. For x in range 1, 11 because the second argument is exclusive. Then I will print x. After each print statement, we print a new line. Do you remember in previous topics how we would follow our print statement with comma and then a new character, such as a space? Well, end is a keyword argument found within the built-in print statement. In place of ending each print statement with a new line, we are using this keyword argument of end and setting it to be a space. Another one is separate that's found within the print statement. Maybe we have some numbers. They're all separate strings. The numbers 1 through 5. I can use the separate keyword argument, then separate each of these strings with a given character or characters. I will separate each of these strings with a dash. A lot of built-in functions, such as the print function, they have some keyword arguments you can use. Let's go over an exercise now. We're going to create a function to generate a phone number, but we'll need to pass in a country code, area code, the first 3 digits and the last 4 digits. Let's define this function as define get phone to get a phone number. We have a country code, area code, first meaning first few digits, then last meaning last few digits. We will return an F string. We will place our country code first, dash, then our area code, dash, the first few digits, dash, the last few digits. My phone number, phone num, equals, I will invoke the get phone number function we just created, but we'll need a country code, an area code, first few digits, then last few digits. And remember, the order doesn't necessarily matter. Usually I try and be consistent with the order of the parameters. Make up a phone number. I'm in the United States. My country code is 1. area code 123. The next few digits will be 456. The last few will be 7890. Then let's print this phone number. Print phone num. And here's my phone number. Although you can change it up based on how you do phone numbers in your country. This is typically how you would see a phone number in the United States. All right, everybody, so those are keyword arguments. They are just arguments preceded by an identifier that matches the name of a function's parameters. It does help with readability, and the order of the arguments doesn't matter. When invoking a function, it could be helpful to identify some of these arguments. And well, everybody, those are keyword arguments in Python. Hello, friends, it's me again. Today I need to explain arbitrary arguments. Arbitrary meaning a varying amount of arguments. We don't know how many arguments the user is going to pass in when they invoke a function. To accept a varying amount of arguments, developers tend to use these parameters of args and kwargs. Args means arguments. Kwargs means keyword arguments. You would want to prefix each of these parameters with the unpacking operator, which is an asterisk. When you invoke a function that has args or kwargs as parameters, you will pack all of those arguments into a tuple if it's args, or a dictionary if the parameter's kwargs. Let's go over an example. I will parameter, argument, and kwargs. Args means arguments. Kwargs means keyword arguments. You would want to prefix each of these parameters with the unpacking operator, which is an asterisk. When you invoke a function that has args or kwargs as parameters, you will pack all of those arguments into a tuple if it's args, or a dictionary if the parameter's kwargs. Let's go over an example. I will create a function to add two numbers together. Define add function. There will be two parameters, a, comma, b. All I'm going to do is return a plus b. I will invoke this function, pass in two arguments because we have two parameters set up, 1, comma, 2. Then I'm going to print the result. Big surprise there. My function returned 3. All right, well, what if I would like to pass in 3 parameters this time? Well, I can no longer use this function. The add function takes 2 positional arguments, but 3 were given. I could modify this function so that it could accept a varying amount of arguments, any amount. I'm going to replace the parameters with asterisk, then the word args, meaning arguments. So when we use the unpacking operator, what's going to happen now is that with the arguments that we pass into this function, we will pack them all into a tuple. And if you don't believe me, let's test it. I'm going to print the type of args. Then I'm going to remove this print statement for now. My parameter args is a tuple that I could work with. We can use the built-in methods of this tuple, or we could iterate over it. I'm going to iterate over this tuple. For every arg in args. For tuple, or we could iterate over it. You can use the built-in methods of this tuple, or we could iterate over it. I'm going to iterate over this tuple. For every arg in args. For every argument in arguments. What we'll do is create a variable named total to keep track of the total. Total plus equals the current arg that we're iterating over. Then at the end, I will return the total. Let's print the result. Print, add these three numbers together. There we are. My total is 6. Then we can pass in any amount of arguments. 4 this time, maybe 5, or even 1. With my parameter args, you can change this name to something else, like nums, meaning numbers, for every num in nums. Total plus equals num. This would work too. The name of the parameter isn't as important as the unpacking operator. Just by typical naming conventions, people tend to stick with args, but the parameter name can vary. Let's try a different example. Let's create a function to display somebody's name. Display name. We will accept a varying amount of arguments. Use the unpacking operator, then follow the unpacking operator with the unique parameter name. For every arg in args, let's print each argument, then replace the ending character of my print statement with a space. Now, sometimes people can have a varying number of names in their full name. There can be a first name, middle name, last name, maiden name, a title, etc. So I'm going to pass in just a first name and a last name. SpongeBob SquarePants. If I need to add a middle name, I can do that. SpongeBob Harold SquarePants, or a title, Dr. SpongeBob Harold SquarePants the Third. Yeah, as I was saying, with the unpacking operator, followed by a unique parameter name, you can pack all of these arguments into a tuple, which you can use within this function. Now let's discuss kwargs. You use two unpacking operators. Then typically people follow this with the word kwargs, meaning keyword arguments. It allows you to pass multiple keyword arguments, which we discussed in the last topic. I think this would be great for an address. Define print address function. Use double asterisks. Then we can add a parameter name, but people usually stick with kwargs, meaning keyword arguments. Just as a placeholder, I'm going to type pass. Pass doesn't do anything. I want this program to be able to run. We'll get back to this function momentarily. I'm going to invoke this function, print address, then pass in multiple keyword arguments. With an address, you would typically have a street, a city, state. Depending on what country you live in, you may have more or less of these keyword arguments. I live in the United States. We have a state. Then a zip code. Okay, my street will be, I'm just making something up here, 123 Fake Street. City will be Detroit. State, Michigan. Zip code, 54321. Just to make this look better, I'm going to place each of these keyword arguments on a new line. For me, that's just more readable, but you do you. When I pass in these keyword arguments, we will pack them into a dictionary. Just to prove it, let's print the type of kwargs. Look at that, class dictionary. Within this function, you can treat kwargs as if it's a dictionary. There's a lot of built-in methods, or we could iterate over the keys, the values, or both. To iterate over the values, let's say for every value in our dictionary kwargs dot values method, print every value. Here's all the values. For the keys, let's change this for loop to be for every key in kwargs dot keys method, print every key. Here are the keys. For both, you could say for every key, comma, value in quargs.items method, print every key. Actually, let me turn this into an F string. Print every key, colon, value. The items method will return key value pairs. We can pass in a varying amount of keyword arguments. I'm going to add an apartment number. Apartment equals 100. Our keyword argument of apartment was packed into a dictionary along with all of these other keyword arguments. So that's kind of nice. We can pass in a varying amount of keyword arguments. Let's cover an exercise. We're going to use both args and quargs together. We will print a shipping label. Define shipping label function. The parameters will be both args, comma, quargs. Then just for now, I'm going to write pass, just so that this program will work for now. We'll fill in the shipping label function momentarily. When we invoke the shipping label function, we will first pass in any positional arguments, followed by keyword arguments, and it won't work the other way around. I'll prove that in a little bit. So let's say we have Dr. SpongeBob SquarePants the third. Then I'll add my keyword arguments. I'm going to put this on a new line. Street equals 123 Fake Street. Apartment equals 100. City equals Detroit. State equals Michigan. Zip equals 54321. When we invoke this function, we have a mix of arbitrary positional arguments and arbitrary keyword arguments. This shipping label function is designed to accept both. You do need args first, followed by quargs. This program will run, but if we have it the other way around, quargs followed by args, it's not going to function properly. You can see that we have a syntax error. With your parameters, make sure that your keyword arguments follow your positional arguments. Let's iterate over the positional arguments first. For every arg in args, let's print each arg. Then I will change the ending character of my print statement to be a space. Here's the name of the user who we're shipping something to with the shipping label function. I will print a new line. Then we will iterate over all the keyword arguments. For every value in my dictionary quargs.values method, I will print each value. Then I will change the ending character of my print statement to be a space. Alright, it's not looking too bad so far. If you were to remove some keyword arguments or some positional arguments, this should work still, which it does. I'm going to change the format of this address slightly. Let's add our street on one line, then the city, state, and zip code on the next line. Let's get rid of this for loop. To print the street, I'm going to print use an f string, add a placeholder, quargs.get method. I'm going to get the street key. With this get method, you'll probably need to place them within single quotes, because if you use double quotes, Python gets confused as to where this f string ends. We will use single quotes. Let's test it. All right, we have a street. On the next line, we will print the city, state, and zip. Print f string placeholder quargs dot get within single quotes the city. I'll add another placeholder. Quargs dot get state, then quargs dot get zip. Let's see what we have. All right, not too bad. What if the user has an apartment keyword? Apartment equals number 100. Well, we should probably add that too. Within this top print statement, I will add another placeholder, invoke the get method of the dictionary. The key we're looking for is apartment. Dr. SpongeBob SquarePants, 123 Fake Street, apartment number 100, Detroit, Michigan, 54321. What if our print statement is set up to display a street and an apartment, but the user doesn't have an apartment? This would display none, and we don't want that. I'm thinking what we'll do is we'll place this print statement within an if statement. What we'll check is if apartment in quargs. If there's an apartment key in quargs, our dictionary, then print this line. Else we will print just the street. The person doesn't have an apartment. We won't print the apartment then. But if they do have an apartment, apartment equals number 100, then we will. 123 Fake Street. Apartment number 100. Here's a challenge round. What if a user has a P.O. box? Let's change apartment to P.O. box. The string will be P.O. box number 1001, I suppose. I'll add an else if statement. Else if P.O. box in our dictionary quargs. Let's print the street. I'll copy this line, paste it, followed by a second print statement. Quargs.get PO box. There we are. Dr. SpongeBob SquarePants, 123 Fake Street, P.O. Box 1001, Detroit, Michigan, 54321. All right, everybody, those are arbitrary arguments. When you invoke a function, you can pass in a varying amount of arguments. Set up your parameter to be args for a variant a. Alright, PO box. (1001) Detroit, Michigan 54321. Alright everybody, those are arbitrary arguments. When you invoke a function, you can pass in a varying amount of arguments. Set up your parameter to be args for a varying amount of non-keyword arguments, or quargs for a varying amount of keyword arguments. You can set up both in your parameters, which we did for this exercise. And well everybody, those are arbitrary arguments in Python.